Hello and welcome to another episode of the 60O podcast. My name's Tom Campbell. Great to have your company, Damien. We're halfway through the season, Seibs. Who's been the best player?
Oh, gee.
It's a bit of a weird...
That's a tough one, mate. You know what? The person who come to mind, my first instinct was to say Zach Lomax.
Yeah, right.
Bizarre one, but that's without thinking too much. It was just the first name that come to mind.
It is a weird one because Nathan Cleary's obviously been hurt for a while. Tom's been out for a while. So you've got Kalen Ponga's been out for a while. So you haven't really been able to have
that's right.
any of the main studs.
You think of it, mate. Like Reece Walsh has had a stop-start year. Mitch Moses broke his foot.
Munster.
Munster. Sean Johnson's been injured for half the year. They're the usual candidates, and none of them have been available. So I'm sure if I thought hard, I'd find someone else. But look, at the moment, Lomax.
I'll throw up another name, Jerome Hughes. I think he's been so important to what Melbourne does.
He has, mate, but he's missed a bit of footy himself.
I know, but the proof is in the pudding for me. He is Melbourne's most important player. Like Munster's the most brilliant, but Hughes is the most important. And when he's not there, it's so evident. Yeah, no,
100%. Mate. He's a very important player to the Storm. He plays within their structure so well, and then obviously his running game is it's elite.
You and I haven't been able to dissect State of Origin since.
No.
Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm stunned by the amount of people still saying that it wasn't a send-off.
I'm not in the it wasn't a send-off camp. I could have lived with it not being a send-off. That's where I sit. Every NRL game, every day of the week, it's a send-off. As we were texting each other. As I said, I thought it was a 3 or 4 week suspension. I could have lived with it out being a suspension purely because 5 minutes into Origin 1, which I was so excited for, regardless of how good you are, in an Origin game, for 75 minutes down a player, it's game over.
That's a fair point. I think
that's where I sit.
I do think that the Blues had patches where they showed tremendous courage and they were fantastic. I will say though, I do think that there was a small element of Queensland took their foot off the gas after that moment. Before that, and I know it's only 8 minutes, but Queensland were rolling. They defended a set on their line, and then they marched 80 metres up and scored it.
So, two things. I reckon for about 10 minutes after the send-off, they exploded, and then the foot. So, for that first 20 minutes or so, they were through the roof, and then the foot come off the throat. But again, credit to New South Wales. They ripped in. They didn't go away. They showed a lot of commitment, and they got to a point where at 20-10, if they scored next, it was, it's on here. But they emptied the tank, couldn't quite get it done. And I'll talk about my thought as to why they didn't get it done in a second. But they couldn't quite get it done, and then basically Queensland went the length, scored, game over. Going back to that 8 minute mark, when you spoke about Queensland marched 80 and scored, one of the worst kicking games I've ever seen in an Origin by Nico Hines, and it all started at that point with the 20. They had us under the pump, 20-meter restart, rolled up the field, try. And again, show some resilience, defend your line, but it all started back with that kicking game. He wasn't kicking him out of trouble. His attacking kicks just were offering nothing. They were either going dead or pulling up way too short. So I even think with 13 on the field, they would have struggled to get across the line purely because that game management and kicking game in particular just wasn't good enough.
You're 100% correct. And we will talk about Mitch Moses possibly coming into the team a little bit later, because that is by far and away what they were missing the most. It was a not only a decent kicking game, but he brings a great one. So I think it will be very, very tough. Like I could not leave Mitch Moses out of this team for game 2 if I was a selector. But just going back to that, Queensland roll up the field, and Daly Cherry Evans grabs the ball from dummy half on tackle 5 and goes down the short side, exploits that, creates the space back open for Ben Hunt. I thought, and this is going to get lost because it was 12-on-13, I thought it was Daly's best Origin game of his career. I thought he was just absolutely superb and did absolutely everything to perfection. He's a gem, isn't he?
Oh, he is, mate. And you know what? It seems like the last 3 or 4 seasons, after every Origin game, someone said that exact comment that you just said. Gee, I think that could have been Cherry Evans' best ever Origin game. So he's getting better and better. I don't think he's had the best season so far for Manly. I think there's been a couple of games where he's drifted in and out of the contest. Not as far as having a dig. He always has a dig, but I just think there's been a couple of games where he's been hot and cold with his performance. But yeah, the other night he was the best player on the field.
And not only that, Steve, but you think about where he started in his Origin career. There was a big saga about backflipping on the Titans, and I remember the Courier Mail had him on the back page in a Blues jersey. Like, that's how far we've come.
Yeah, that's I know. The media they do my head in. Hey, it's ridiculous. I remember that. It was crazy. Just because he decided to stay at the club, they put him in a New South Wales jersey. Anyway.
And but not only that, and he was in and out of the Queensland team for a little bit there off the bench, but it's gone from that to not only being one of the great Queensland players to one of the best captains that we've ever had. Because when the game's on the line, he lifts.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. He is. He's excellent. He always gives everything he's got, and because of the way he plays, he takes chances like that short side play. Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming. I don't even think he thought he was going to do that until it was in the moment, and he just reacted and jumped the short side, cut back across. So that's what gives him that little bit of X factor, and it was good to see.
Would you, apart from Mitch Moses, there's obviously Joseph Suaalii not there. I understand that you'd bring Mitch Moses in. Who would you feel at centre, and then would there be any other changes that you'd make?
I would bring Latrell back in. So straight away. Wouldn't even be a conversation with him. It would be you pick him, and he clearly wants to play. He loves attention. He loves a big moment. So I wouldn't even entertain asking him, does he want to play? It's, you picked, you're right, left centre. So he'd be left centre, Crichton to the right. Moses straight away for Hines, and I would contemplate finding a spot for Burton on the bench. I'm not sure who misses out, because Leniu was great. If I had to say someone misses out, it's probably Hudson Young. Maybe that swap, but that'd be the only other thing I'd consider. And look, to be honest, if Dylan Edwards is fit, I'm not saying what I would do, because I'm still in the Teddy camp for at least this 12 months. But if he picked Edwards game 1 and Edwards is now all of a sudden back available, well, he has to pick Edwards again, doesn't he?
Yes.
I thought that Teddy was good the other night, but he goes against everything that he was considering in the first place if he doesn't bring him straight back in.
Teddy's performance was not good enough to slam the door shut on Dylan Edwards. That's the
No, it wasn't. Yeah. It was a solid 7 out of 10. He played good. Well, he played good, didn't play great, didn't play bad. If you sat down with someone and said, how'd Teddy go? He's like, yeah, he went okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And for Queensland, it was interesting talking to Hannah the other day. There was no discussion as to what the plan was. They were very clear on the fact that Hammer would go to fullback and Cobbo would go into the centres. definitely the right call in hindsight. But I asked Josh, I thought, would there be a moment there that they thought about just putting Selwyn at fullback because then you don't disrupt everybody else's sort of jam, and Hammer can stay at centre. But clearly the right call, clearly the right call, and just brain them.
Look, and as a pure fullback, Hammer's better than Reece Walsh. As a pure supporting fullback, positional play under the high ball. But Walsh just has that. And I know this sounds ridiculous because Hammer's the fastest human I've ever seen in real life. And that's a fact. I've never seen anyone faster. However, Reece Walsh's speed off the mark and his hands and his ability to create things is better than Hammer. So that's the difference between the two.
Yeah, the 0 to 10 meters, Reece Walsh has got almost nearly.
Yes.
But
yeah, he is. Yeah.
0 to 50 meters, the Hammer's got everyone covered in state of origin level anyway.
Yeah.
What do you think Queensland has to change going into game 2? Because there's no doubt that they have to be better in a lot of ways, and they shot themselves in the foot in a lot of ways at the start of that second half with a lot of drop ball. Liam Martin was fantastic, putting pressure on people like Jermaine Hopkins. And so there's no doubt that they have to be better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I can't see any changes at all to the team. I mean, I don't think there's any injury clouds or anything like that. So I'd assume they'd just keep the same 17. They'd talk about their ball control and probably the intensity for the full game because, like you said, it appeared as though they took the foot off the throat. But again, with 10 to go, they put it away.
Yeah, that's right. And do you think as well it's fair to say that they probably did get the better of us through the middle, but the kicking game was just the ultimate equaliser in how the game played out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, another big moment is, and again, this is nitpicking, but Hines missed a 40-20 by an inch.
Yeah.
Next set, Cherry Evans nails one. Yeah.
By an inch.
So that's the perfect example of the kicking game.
Let's just talk about this for a sec. West Tigers taking on the Titans. This is going to tell us actually quite a lot because I think that there's a chance that the Titans could put the cleaners through them.
So do I. Tigers are not a good footy side. I don't think Titans are a good footy side, but they are better than the Tigers.
Yeah. What do you make of Lachlan Galvin?
Without knowing the truth around what's really happening, I look at it from a couple of perspectives, and I saw there was some chat around the footy shows during the week. In particular, a couple of former players talking about, well, you know what, he's 18, he's made the choice to get his hand injected. Well, straight away, if my son was 18 and, I get it for a week here or there if you're short on players. But if you've got a broken hand and you're feeling that you've got to get your hand injected every week for a month to try and fill a spot in a team that's crap, I don't know how I'd feel about my son going through that. That's just in the back of my mind. And I know I played 1,000 games of footy. I know what it's like. You do what you can to get on the field, and this is elite professional level, so it's different, but they're getting worse. So they are really getting worse. And who knows what he has or hasn't been promised. So if two of their best players and their best young players are screaming to get out of there, it must be worse than what we think.
The other thing I'll say too, Clemmer, Bateman, Papali'i, not on the field. When you're such a poor team and you remove some veterans like that, it's bloody tough to win any game.
Of course it is. And that's why I think too, the Dragons Manly game this weekend is going to be an interesting watch because you look at form lines. What's a more impressive form line coming into that game? Rolling a terrible Tigers when you were actually down to them at halftime, or pushing Penrith. So people will look at it and think, oh, Manly lost last week. Dragons won by 40. let's use some perspective. So I think betting wise, there's probably some value around that game, because I think it was 14-12 at halftime. Is that right? In
Yes.
that game last week? Yeah, and I know the Tigers that can do some damage, and every now and again they score some tries, but they are not good.
And regardless of what I said before about the players being missing and it's hard to win a game, that is true. But when you complete 4 sets, you don't give yourself a chance.
Have you ever seen a stat like that before? I can't remember.
No, I'll hit up the rugby league eye test and see if that's ever happened, because that is just absurd levels of poorness. Like, I don't know how that's even possible.
But then it got to a point for about 15 minutes, kick off, score. So they weren't getting a chance to complete a set because they weren't defending 6 tackles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You don't even give yourself a chance when you're pulling up stats like that. But we'll dissect it all next week. Steve, thanks for your time. This has been the 60O podcast, and that is full time.